Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about LTCN going to the moon, or at least it looks like it is, and all the other grayscale trusts to give you guys an update for the week. Let's get it. So, first thing we're going to look at here is LTCN. As you guys can see, it is moving up pretty substantially here. To be completely honest, I was not expecting it to move up this aggressively from the EMAs, but clearly I was mistaken. Nobody's ever going to be right 100% of the time, but like we always say, we'd rather be rich than right. So, if the price did not come back down to this roughly $7 level, which it did not, well, okay, whatever. Doesn't matter because we have skin in the game. So, as you guys can see here, we told you before that we are repositioned, and that's exactly what we did. So, you guys can see the dollar amount and our cost per share here is 11.64, so not the greatest entry, but not the worst, kind of somewhere in the middle. So we are once again still in considerable profit here. We're up 30%, so that's not terrible, and 18% on BCHG, and we have not bought any BCHG in a little while. So currently up in unrealized profit, which we could sell right now if we wanted to, but we're not going to because we think the prices are going to go higher, of about $1,700, and of course still sitting on some cash. So with that being said, where is this thing likely to push up? Probably up here to about 1640. I would say it could potentially meet some seller resistance somewhere in this area between 1640 to 1880. I will do my best to keep you guys updated on how the markets respond to the price moving up to this zone. I do suspect that there is going to be some bears up here waiting to sell the price, or to basically dump on the longs, but I could be wrong. Maybe it just blasts straight through that. We go up to the next resistance. And if we do go up to the next resistance, just so y'all know, it is between $23 and $27. So from where we have our position at, that's still roughly about a 2 to 2.5x. That's pretty good. So we'll just have to wait and see. Support still sits roughly between, I would say, pretty much about 690 to the blue EMA obviously is clearly very strong support. So we'll say 690 to roughly about $10 a share. And that's on LTCN. Now BCHG, which you guys can see we are pushing back into the previous resistance here. Once again, we bounced almost perfectly off the blue EMA. As you guys can see all these wicks here, it's just like the buyers just were buying the zone, and eventually it ended up popping to the upside. So if it breaks out and manages to get above this candle close here, we could be headed to the next resistance. The higher up resistance here is between 540 to 580 a share, and the current resistance is between 380 to 420-ish per share. So your major support is going to be between 250, I would say, to roughly about 320 a share. That's BCHG. Sorry, wrong one. So we'll go over here to HZEN. So as you guys can see, HZEN is still kind of really just doing a whole lot of nothing, just chopping around in this resistance zone. It could be bullish, it could be bearish. We don't really know at this point. We have not had a confirmed break above this line here. As you guys can see, that's the wick high from all the way back here in August 2022. We have not had a candle close above that, not one single candle, so that's a little bit concerning. But if you're looking to buy this, I would say probably the best prices, not financial advice, would be somewhere between $1.30 to roughly about, we'll say the yellow EMA has held some pretty strong support. So about $1.30 to roughly about $1.70, I would say. Okay, GXLM, we're still bearish out of this rising wedge pattern here. It's obviously not a perfect pattern, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It only matters if it breaks bullish or bearish. So we are still just sitting above the EMAs, but we're below the rising wedge here. So kind of in no man's land, really. If you're looking to buy, I would say probably try to get in maybe at the red EMA. 2350 would be my entry point. If I was going to start buying, I would probably DCA this one because there's no telling how far it could drop. The start of the wedge is down here at $14, so I definitely would not be putting all my money in at the red EMA. So this thing could go back up to, if it does start to smash to the upside, I would say up as high as probably 37.17 to previous resistance 53 to roughly about 58.50 is what you'd be looking at for the most current resistance zones. So maybe, sorry, that measurement's wrong. So let's go to the red EMA here. So red EMA, so you'd be looking at roughly about a 55% to potentially as high as 125% to 150% gain on this position. So now ETH, obviously ETH looking very bullish, has definitely moved up much longer than I was expecting. But again, we do not have any ETH. We have a very small amount of Ethereum, but that's to transact ERC20 tokens. You have to have it to move some of these altcoins. Those of you guys that have been in the space for a while, you know how this works. So your macro support is still between $2 to $4. I would say at this point, if it hasn't come back down to that, which it hasn't in a very long time, basically since the start of 2023, it's not going to. So current support would be roughly between $17 or so. Yeah, roughly about $17, I would say, to this yellow EMA. So probably about somewhere between 17 to $20. So let's just assume you got in the zone and you wanted to hold up to support or resistance, sorry. So you get 45 to roughly about 65% in profit. So here's ETH Classic. Just so you all know, ETH Classic is an oscillator to Ethereum, which means when Ethereum goes up, Ethereum Classic is going to go up with it. That's generally how it works. It's very similar to Bitcoin oscillators. So we're still bullish on this one, although not breaking out of the resistance. So I would say that this is kind of neutral at this point. If I was looking to buy this, I'd probably start buying somewhere between $9.20 a share to about $10.50 a share. The yellow EMA could be a buy zone too, but because it hasn't had a breakout of this resistance or even above the bottom of this resistance in weeks, I would say that maybe a slight pullback would be a better choice. Just my opinion, of course. So roughly about $9.20 a share to $10.50 a share could be potential entries. So your macro support is $2.90 a share to $5 a share. Macro resistance between $13.20 to roughly about $15.90. So if you got in, let's just say halfway in between here, you'd be looking at roughly about 35 to 62%. Not bad. So for $1,000, you'd make about 320 to 650 bucks. Okay, Zcash. So Zcash looking very kind of choppy. Generally, okay, with altcoins, generally speaking, or any cryptocurrency, when you see it go sideways like this is known as accumulation. Okay, so in the immediate short term, it looks kind of ugly and you're like, yeah, whatever, it's not doing anything. When it looks the most boring, that's typically the best time to pick it up. This is what's known as accumulation or an accumulation zone in crypto. Bitcoin and Ethereum do similar things after they've hit their bottom, basically. So you guys can see that the price has really chopped sideways for a long time. So in my opinion, if I was going to pick this up, I would do it now. That's just my opinion, of course. But if you want to be more precise, your support's going to be between 150 to 177. Resistance going to be between 270 to about $4. If you wanted to wait and say, yeah, well, I'm not going to buy this till it gets to support, that's fine. You get roughly a 50 to about 124% gain in the immediate short term. So I would have to find an altcoin to show you guys this. Let me actually see if I can find one. So let's, I noticed that there's quite a few people that watch this channel that look at Solana. So let's take Solana for an example. So you guys can see, just to kind of reiterate why Zcash is currently in an accumulation zone, so to speak. So you can currently see something very, very similar with Solana that has already played out. Okay, the thing with Zcash or the Zcash Grayscale Trust has not played out. Solana was, once it hit its bottom, which it did right here, as you can see, November 2022, it kind of chopped around sideways for a really long time, basically a whole year. And then it had this humongous breakout. Okay. So when you're in an accumulation zone like this, eventually this thing's going to bust to the upside. And when it does, if you didn't get in during the accumulation zone, well, you missed your chance. You just have to take a look at something else that you could potentially buy. So once again, GSOL, accumulation zone here, it popped out. I would say it's a bit late to get in on this one on the dip, but if you wanted to, I would probably buy somewhere between $80 to roughly about 122 a share. I would not touch it unless it hit those prices. That's just my opinion. So if we were to measure the move, well, actually, let's measure halfway in between this. So you measure halfway in between this, you're going to get roughly about 83% to 108%. That's assuming it pulls back. It even pulls back this far, which at this point, I would say it's looking pretty bullish after this bounce off of the blue EMA here. It's not looking like it really wants to stop, so it may actually go higher. But if it does pull back, those are going to kind of be your buy and sell zones. So the Grayscale Mana Trust, kind of really just choppy. Not necessarily accumulation. I think accumulation was kind of down here, but very choppy, I would say. I would say probably if I was going to buy this one, I would get in at the red EMA, so roughly about 980, maybe $10. So just assume that you got in that low, which it did go that low just a couple weeks ago. You get about a 65 to a 96% gain in the immediate short term. So your macro supports between 150 to 340 a share. Macro resistance immediately is between $17.10 to $20 a share. I would say that this one has a likelihood of potentially coming back down here. Whether it comes all the way back down to the bottom or not, that remains to be seen. You guys can kind of see that this top area here, which is resistance, flipped into support. So we got a lot of bounces off of that particular zone, that price area. It's very heavily traded, as you guys can see. So I would say roughly about 10-ish, 10 to maybe 1050 is probably going to be like the premier buy zone. That's just my opinion. Of course, anything is possible in crypto and trading. So GBAT still looking very bullish. If I was looking to buy, I'd buy roughly between about 410 a share to, I would say maybe somewhere in this zone. So maybe at the top of the zone, 514 a share. So if you manage to get in on those prices, you'd be looking at, well, if we just measure all the way to the top, you say roughly up to about 130%. So the macro support is between 70 cents to $1.15. Macro resistance, 450 to 510. This is actually support, but we'll just call it resistance for now. And then the top here is at 960 a share. So G-Link, this thing has just absolutely flown off the handle. I would not touch this one with a 10-foot pole. But if you're looking to buy at some point in the future when prices potentially come down, which they may before the actual Bitcoin bull run, that does happen, believe it or not. So it'd be $660 to about $10 a share at the absolute bottom. And then $39 a share to roughly about $45 a share is where I'd be looking to get in. So if you decided to wait to get in between these red and blue EMAs, which there's no guarantee it could come down this low, you would be taking a look at potentially roughly around 120% gain to the previous swing high up here on this wick. Phil G still moving up. But then again, that's not really surprising. Usually things play out in crypto much longer than people expect. That's the whole notion of, what is it called? So markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. That's kind of what you're looking at right here. So if I was going to buy this thing, I would wait for it to get down to the support box. So the support box is between 37 to about 41. The next support below that, which I do not think it's going to go back down to before the end of, or I should say before the next bear market, is about 440 to 1175 a share. So if we measure this, we'll just say that you would get roughly about 200% gain if you had the patience to wait for it to come down to the zone. Again, the zone is 39, or sorry, let's try this again. So 39 to about $41 a share. So GLIV, this one has, it seems, relatively low liquidity, so I probably wouldn't be buying this one. But if you wanted to, it's currently sitting at a pretty good spot, I would say. Maybe wait for it to dip a little bit lower to, like, I would say maybe about $11.50 a share and then buy in. That's just my opinion. Of course, you can do what you want, but if you manage to nail it roughly at around $11.50, you could be taking a look at roughly about 150% gain. Again, the macro support is between $2 to $3.80, and the current support is between $11.50 to, I would say, about $15, and then obviously the swing high is at roughly about $29. So before we wrap up this video, I just wanted to show you guys something real quick. So Bitcoin, as you guys can see, this thing is really just ripping to the moon. So Bitcoin is currently at $50,180, but I do want to point something out here. I'm not saying it's going to go lower, but it's a possibility. So we're in February right now. As you guys can see, this last February that we did have a pullback after the February high here. It generally starts around the middle of February. We had about a 22% drop. If this does happen, do expect the grayscale trusts, especially the oscillators like LTCN and BCHG, to have a pullback. It's possible. Really don't know if that's going to happen yet. I mean, Bitcoin's obviously looking very bullish. It's pretty much rode the yellow EMA since about October of last year, and it has not had a serious pullback yet, which is kind of a warning flag, but so far things look pretty bullish. Especially if we get a weekly close above this 48,000 level, which is the March 2022 high. As we showed you before, this is where Bitcoin really dumped off. People thought that it was just dipping and it was going to go higher than 70,000. Instead, it got sold off like an absolute banshee. And now we're back at that zone. So we'll just have to keep an eye out and let you guys know what's going on with that. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.